This old house is made possible by a grant from Owens Corning Fiberglass Corporation, manufacturers of residential building products.
Norm, I thought you were supposed to be installing my chimney today.
Bob, before I can cut the hole for the chimney, I have to take the snow off the roof. And that's extra, you know.
Snow removal. Hi, I'm Bob Vila. Welcome to this old house. Today, aside from watching Norm remove snow and actually get our chimney pipe through the roof, we're also going to be showing you how to install the drawers that we built last week for our kitchen cabinets. We'll be taking a peek at a sink that we found in a salvage yard, which is a perfect match for our old pink bathroom. And we're also going to be spending a good deal of time in the breezeway, where we'll be showing you and giving you lots of tips on how to do-it-yourself install quarry tile floors. So let's go inside where it's warm and get started in the kitchen. I'll tell you one thing, I'd much rather be working on kitchen cabinets where it's warm right now this time of year. Hey, remember last week we were showing you how to build the kitchen drawers and the plywood boxes and all that. Today I'm going to talk about how you install them in the cabinets. Before I get to that, let me point out this one last thing that we had to do to the cabinets themselves. You want to have a shelf in there, and what I wanted was a large shelf taking up the whole area. So I had to get that shelf in place before I do any of this top nonsense. Most cabinets that you'll buy in a supply house that come ready-made and in a cardboard box will give you a shelf that's only about up to here, a 12-inch shelf. And I want to double that because I want to have plenty of storage in this area since it is a small kitchen. So we made this out of 3/4-inch plywood with the finished face up, and then we applied a pine rail to the front of it, which doesn't really give it too much strength, but it does improve the appearance. Of course, this could be covered with shelf paper or with a laminate, or it could be painted or whatever. I've used shelf standards and these little brackets that attach on the sides like that to hold the shelf in place. Let me lift it up and give you a look. Because this allows me the freedom of adjusting the height of my shelf downwards or upwards. And I put them every 1.5 feet or so all along the perimeter of the shelf so that I get plenty of support, because I've got a very large shelf here, a full 6 feet across, and that's going to take a lot of storage and a lot of weight. Notice I've also put them on the inside of my stile over here, because this is a structural part of the cabinet, and I wanted to get as many of these brackets holding my shelf as possible. Okay, so obviously the point I wanted to make was that this had to be put in place before any of this drawer hardware got installed. Now, take a look at one of our drawers. This is what we were dealing with last week. This one we've already taken the front panel, which overlaps it by a 1/2 inch on either side and so forth, and we've glued it to the inside of the drawer and put in a couple of screws. The type of hardware that we're using is a channel type of runner, which goes on either side of the drawer, and then its matching part goes on the insides of the cabinets. And look, they come with these plastic rollers with ball bearings. They have a pretty long life. Let me put it in the actual opening so that you see how easy they operate. You heard that click. That's the lock on it. Once you put the drawer in, you can take it out easily. It doesn't wobble around, and it always locks firmly so that it doesn't fall out. So you can see right there, I'm overlapping. I'm getting a nice clean flush look over the cabinet face. This drawer we haven't done yet, but I'll show you how we proceed to get the front panel installed on it without any mistakes. There we go. I know that this drawer is already level because we put it in level. So what I'm going to do before I get ready to attach this next drawer front is to get a little help from my level and carry this level line drawer 1 to drawer 2, making sure that they're right on the money, which they are, and giving it a mark. And this is very important because one thing that you want to maintain is a level line across the tops of all your drawers. And notice to the left of me here, I'll have another drawer in place. And it's very important that when you walk into this kitchen, you see straight lines. You don't see any mistakes. All I did then was to mark the back of the panel so that I know how these two pieces go together. And then, of course, they get glued together and screwed. The next issue with hardware, of course, would be how do you operate them? What kind of handles are you going to put on them? And one of my problems with designing such a small kitchen is that I hate to clutter things up with drawer pulls and door pulls and all of that nonsense. One of the most popular types of pull is what we've got on our old prototype drawer here. It's called a wire pull, and you can get it in stainless or brushed chromed finish or even polished brass. They used to cost about 60 cents a piece, but now they're at least twice that much. They're very slick and architectural and so forth, and I like them in some cases, but I just as soon avoid them in this kitchen. I just as soon avoid having to bump into them since I don't have that much room. So what I've done is I've provided each one of my drawers with a finger pull on the bottom of the drawer that I can actually grip into and pull in and out with. You can't see it too well here, but let me show you how we actually make them. We take the same tool that we were using last week to apply the plastic laminate and to get it, a nice, even, smooth corner, which is called a router. And in this situation, we've mounted it onto a little table that's specially designed and sold for this purpose. We'll be using what's called a half-round cutter blade, which again has a little roller on the top of it here. And a half-round blade actually cuts out a 1/4-inch groove, plows it right out of the material. Let me show you. I'll have to be quiet for a minute, get my glasses on, and plug it in. I've already marked this. There's the center line of the drawer, and I'm going to go about 3 inches in either direction. That's all I do to it. And if this is the bottom of the drawer, I can just put my fingers in there and pull it out. Okay, we'll finish with that one in a minute. There's one other feature of the kitchen that I wanted to talk about, and that's countertops. I'm kind of excited because I just had my butcher block delivered, and I decided I wanted to splurge and have one piece of butcher block in this kitchen, because there simply is not that much room for food preparation, and one thing that's nice to have is a good chopping block, a good work surface for preparing sandwiches and whatever else. With butcher block, although it's a super material to have in the kitchen, you ought to be careful not to design the layout of the kitchen so that it sits right next to a sink, a wet area, or by the same token next to a stove. Because if you have a lot of water constantly splashing on your butcher block, it's going to blacken up after a while, and it's very difficult to get those black marks out. And also, if you get into the habit of putting hot pots and pans on it, you're going to start having burn rings. All you want with this is kind of a nice mellow patina of oiling it and chopping with the knife marks and so forth. So this will be installed right in this location. Over here on my left is where I'll have my stove, and my sink is behind me, so I don't have to worry about the problems I've just been describing. I do come up with another little problem over here. My countertops that I want to put in on either side of the stove are meant to be out of 3/4-inch plywood with a 1/4-inch ceramic tile that I've chosen attached to them. And it's kind of a nice color combination, I think, the blue with the tan or almond color. But look at the problem I got here. This surface is going to be almost a 1/2 inch below this surface. And I could end up just shimming all these counters on this side with the tile and making them gum up. But remember, one of my objectives here is to keep the entire kitchen flush and to keep it all at 36 inches. So rather than fiddle around with putting shims underneath all of this and ending up with a higher counter, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark out along the bottom of this face and the perimeter of my butcher block where it sits on this base cabinet. And then I'll take my router off of this table, and I will simply plow out a groove 3/4 of an inch all across the bottom of it so that this will actually sink down, set into place, and I'll end up with one flush look all around. Sounds like a lot of work. It is. You have to take your time so that it comes out right the first time. Anyhow, we'll be talking more about the kitchen in days to come. Right now I want to give you a look at our pink bathroom, a surprise we got for it. We've removed the vanity cabinet and lavatory that were here. Remember, the lav was cracked, and it was not quite in keeping with a 1950s bathroom. And in the process, we found some damaged tiles. So we've been fortunate enough to find some 1980s pink, which is not a perfect match if you look at it like that. But curiously enough, when you put it on the vertical plane, it blends right in pretty closely. So we'll be using a few pieces of this to fix up the tile job here. But the real surprise is something that my friend Rich Trethewey came up with. He was working in a large home in a wealthy suburb of Boston, and the owners were ready to discard a lovely pedestal sink. And so we've gotten it for nothing, and we thank whoever it was out there that was modernizing their own bathroom for coming to our aid, because here's something that's not costing us a penny. Won't that be a beauty? Of course, we've got to fix the floor and everything else in here first, but it's got single-action faucet and, of course, a sprayer for washing the baby. Who could ask for anything more? Well, we've got a lot more work to do in here. We'll do it before we're through. Let's go see what old Norman is doing out in the living room. You're going great guns there, Norman.
Yeah, Bob.
A little snow coming in.
Yeah. Bob, I thought you were putting wood paneling in here. Why the gypsum board?
Yeah, well, the local building department told us that in this town, because these are all exterior walls, they have to be covered with a fire-rated 5/8-inch thick gypsum board. So we put it on, and then we'll go with paneling over some of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of a stove did you end up choosing?
That's another story. In order to use a wood-burning stove in this locality, we would have to go to a masonry chimney, because we were told that a wood fire burns too hot and that we can't use a metal chimney.
Oh.
So you know what it would cost us to get a masonry chimney installed.
Right.
I asked the building department what options I'd have, and they told me that I could use a coal-burning stove in this location because it doesn't burn quite as hot, and the metal chimney wouldn't get as hot. However, when I went down to the wood-burning stove shop to look at them again, I found out that I wouldn't be able to use a regular metal chimney on a coal-burning stove because the coal produces sulfuric acid, which would rot out the chimney. So I've had to get this rather specialized affair over here, which is a metal, insulated metal chimney pipe, but the inside of it is porcelainized. As you can imagine, cost a few more dollars, but at least we've solved the problem.
Right.
What's the next step we've got to do here? I notice you've done some structural changes for me. You want to give us a description of...
Right. We located the stove, first of all,
Yeah.
so that we could find the pipe. And we had some code things we have to follow there.
Code.
And now the stove has to be 3 feet from any combustible surface.
Yeah.
Unless we use a heat shield, which we will do here. Now, the heat shield is just simply a non-combustible board with an air space behind it so that it keeps the wall cool.
Mm-hmm.
So once we did that with the heat shield, we went 18 inches from where it'll be to these 2 back corners. Then we located the pipe on the stove, which is right in this location, and plumbed up from there and got the center line of this box.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately, it fell right on one of the rafters here.
Yeah.
So we had to cut the rafter off on each end, put 2 pieces across headers between this rafter and this rafter.
Transferring the weight, yeah.
Transferring the weight to the header. And then we just built a box which will take a collar for the
Is
pipe,
that the
which is
square
right
piece
there.
that's over
right.
here?
Now that's ready to go in. And all we have to do is get that up in here. Now this collar provides the clearance that we need from the wood.
So that's its main function. It also looks kind of good.
Right, it looks good. And let me just put a couple nails in that. One on this side.
And what is going on the outside?
Okay, that's where our work starts. Next, we have to put the pipe, and we have to...
Well, I'll give you a hand with it, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Bob, how much did the material for the chimney cost?
$275 for all the pipe from the stove up through the roof.
Oh, that's not bad at all. You couldn't build a masonry chimney for that.
No, that's true.
Well, Bob, this is no day to put this chimney in, but at least let me give you an explanation of all the parts.
Yeah, it's really starting to come down.
Right. The first thing you have to do is put in a section of pipe. Now, I've connected a couple together just to show it. And it goes down in that flange we just put in.
Yeah.
Like that. And it locks in. And then we put the outer covering over it. It's just this black pipe.
How are we going to make it watertight, though?
Okay, first thing we have to do is put this roof flange on. which just simply goes over the pipe like this, down to the roof.
The other way around.
Yep. All right, now I'll have to remove some shingles, but then I'll re-shingle back over this flange. So the only part you only see a little bit of it.
Of the metal.
Then you take this collar and you put that on like that, and you pitch it down, and there's a tape, like a caulking tape, that you stick to the chimney first, and then you just squeeze that collar on there, and then any water will just shed off.
Run off away from the joints down
Right.
there. Yeah.
Then we have to put this top on, which is just a cap to keep water and snow from getting inside the chimney. That goes on like that.
Yeah.
We'll fasten that on. Now, the thing I'll have to do is cut this so that...
How high does it have to be is the question I was going to ask you.
About 2 feet above the ridge.
Above the ridge line of the nearest roof.
Of the nearest
yeah.
roof, that's right.
Okay, that's so that the flue will draw properly, right?
Right.
Good. Well, I don't blame you. This is no time to be working on this, and I want to go inside and get to work on my quarry tile. So why don't you call it quits for the day, huh?
All right, Bob.
All right. With us now is Christy Stottlemyre, our friend and tile expert who's come out to give us a few pointers on how to do it yourself.
Hi, Bob.
What are you getting started on here?
Well, I'm trying to see how these tiles are going to blend. I've got 3 boxes of tile here.
Well, it's called quarry tile. What do you mean blend?
Well, you get darks and lights in quarry tile, shades. They're various colors, and we don't want to get a splotchy effect when we're finished, so we're going to use the 3 boxes and blend them around.
And you keep mixing them up?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's too sophisticated for me right now. All I'm interested in knowing is where do I start? Do I just go to a corner and start laying them down?
Well, Bob, you see, I've drawn these perpendicular lines in the room.
What
I'll tell
for?
you what they are. When you come into the room, it's very important that your grout lines meaning your tile itself also, lines up visually in the room. And these 2 lines are parallel to both of your walls. This line's parallel to this wall, and this one to here.
Okay, so when I walk in the front door, I'll see all those strong lines of grout between the tile kind of being logically parallel to the walls on either side.
Right.
And if I stood over here, the same grid would be parallel to these walls. And that's how you do it. You start off with a couple of perpendicular lines like that.
We have to have some point to start working from.
Okay. Hey, what are the most critical areas in this room? Because we don't have a perfectly square room. And I was wondering, is there some logic involved in finding out where the hardest spot will be?
Well, think about when you come in the room. What are you going to see first?
Well, I'm probably going to look up in this direction.
Well,
My steps?
when you're in the flooring business, you want to look at the floor first, right? This is going to be very important visually. The baseboard's not going to be that important because you can hide cuts under there.
Okay.
But this is going to be wide open.
All right, so this is one area. And what about behind you over here where I stop the tile and go into the living area, which will be carpeted?
Well, we'd like to have a nice parallel line there, too, and have as few cuts as possible there.
Okay. So these 2 are more important than, for example, over here where the baseboard heat will hide the tile that's down there.
Yeah, we can hide a multitude of sins under there.
All right. Well, what do you do next? I mean, I notice you've got a bunch of them arranged there. What's the purpose of that?
Well, you know what I'd like to do? Why don't we just lay a few out with our spaces exactly and see where we are, see how we can shift them around to eliminate cuts on either end where it's important to us.
Is that important to eliminate the number of tiles that you've got to cut? I mean...
Well, you never want to end up with a very small cut. You want to have more than half a tile because it looks real funny if you have those little tiny cuts.
Okay, so the important thing to do is then before you get actually started laying the floor, to play around with the tiles, and let's do that.
Well, I tell you, Bob, it eliminates a lot of problems later if you spend a little bit more time right up front doing your planning.
Okay. Well, Christy, that's taken a half an hour.
But boy, it's been well worth it, Bob. We know
yeah?
exactly what we're going to do now.
Oh, yeah? Tell me again.
Okay, we've started here by the stairs with a full tile, and we've moved to our center line that we snapped. Mm-hmm. And then we started over by the living room, and we got that carpet joint there, and we started with a full tile and again came in to meet our center line. There's one minor problem, and it looks really minor. We can take care of that in a jiffy.
We can't have a fat grout line in there right in the middle of the room. How do we
Not
fix it?
in the middle of the room, no, but what we'll do is we'll move these in to our regular size grout joint,
Well, isn't that going to throw us off at the other end?
It will, but see, that space in there is just a tiny little, like, foyer space. And if you take a 1/4 inch over those 5 tiles in there and spread it out, it'll never show.
You mean make the last 5 or 6 grout lines a little bit fatter just to compensate?
Yeah,
Okay, we
that
can do
won't
that.
show at all.
Of course, the beauty of the whole thing is that we're avoiding having any cut tiles at either one of these critical points. And of course, along the other axis, the one that's kind of going in the north to south direction, I don't have to worry about it because I've got my baseboard heat that'll hide whatever I have to cut over here. I'll always see almost a full tile. Good. Are we actually ready to go to work? What do we have to mix now?
Bob, while you were out, I mixed our thin-set mortar because it has to sit for 20 minutes, and I wanted us to be able to get going with it.
So that's what you were doing while I was up there with Norman. This is just Portland cement and sand and some water, right?
Right. It has some additives in it which let it set up at just the right speed so that we get a proper bond and the cement won't dry up too fast.
Where do you want me to start?
Why don't we start working over here? This looks like it's the toughest part of the room. I've already snapped this extra line that's parallel to the original line that we drew earlier. This will give you a point to start working back from.
Okay. So, what do I do first? I don't have to wet the slab or anything?
No. First, let's get some thin set down on the floor.
All right, but I'm not going to use this brick trowel, am I?
No, I've got a trowel right here for you, and this is the 3/8 inch notch, which is going to deliver the proper amount of mortar for you to work with. Okay, use the flat side of the trowel and even it out and put it into the slab so we get that initial bond with the slab.
Okay, so first, boy, this is like fudge. The first thing I'm doing is spreading with the even side of the trowel.
Really get it into that cement good, because that's what's going to give us the bonding.
Okay. I'm going to need some more in the corner over there.
Yep.
Is it important always to do a small area at a time?
Yeah, because this material has a very limited open time. Once you get a skim on this, you'll lose your bond.
What's open time mean?
That's the time
that you can work with it,
you can work with it before the cement starts to set up.
Oh, okay. So you've got about a half an hour lead time that you can actually work with this material before it starts to dry up on you.
You never want to kind of work in an area that's bigger than your own little environment right there.
All right. Should I add a little bit more?
Well, how much have you got? Let's try notching that.
Okay. Let me just spread this
and
a little
see
bit
if we've
out.
got enough on there.
How do you notch it? Just in a grid fashion?
Yeah, just pull it across.
Should I go on the diagonal or straight across?
Hold it at a 45 degree right there, and just go straight across.
Nice.
Okay, now we're ready to put some tile on.
You're kidding.
Here we go.
You know, we haven't talked about the spacers, and I've always wondered, is that something that professionals use, all these little white plastic things that help to keep the tiles perfectly spaced?
Some do and some don't. Some guys have such wonderful eyes that they just lay it right down, but I think for us it's a great innovation. Okay. It really works marvelously well.
Yeah, but the eye is really important when you're putting them even with the spacer. Are you still kind of picking them at random?
I was just going to say, I've got 3 piles over here that I'm handing them to you from.
Okay. Because when you're this close up to the material, you can really see that there is a lot of variation. I need some more spacers.
Okay. Now I think let's put a light tile in there because we're getting awfully dark.
Okay, Christy, what's next?
Okay, now we beat in the tile.
Beat in the tile.
There's your board, and now we take some, lay that on an area that you want to work in.
Yeah.
And just put some pressure right onto the tile.
Just press down on it or
Well,
actually
kind of beat it, yeah.
All right. What exactly am I doing by beating it?
What we're doing is we're spreading out that mortar so that we get 100% coverage and making contact and bond
With the
between
tile.
the tile and the mortar.
Okay, because the groove helps us to make the bond with the cement underneath. And by beating the tile down, we're forcing that mortar into the... Can we check one?
Yeah, let's check one.
Can I just...
Right.
Hey, it's
Here.
not that easy. Okay.
Hopefully there's some bond there.
Boy. Yeah.
Perfect.
Good.
Perfect.
Let me beat it some more. But the objective again here was to get all that mortar to set right into the thin grooves that are built into the tile.
We want 100% coverage on the back of that tile.
Okay. You know what? I'm getting ready to have to worry about cutting tile.
Well, Bob, I'm not going to be able to see you through this whole job, so let me give you a few lessons on the
Why
cutter.
not? It's such fun. This is a rent-a-cutter, isn't it?
Yeah, this is supposedly a nifty one here. We're in a one-stroke deal. Let's see how it works. All right. First, you're going to measure your cut. That's what this little guide's for. Then you set that for the size of your cut. That holds your tile in.
Square, yeah.
Yep. And then you score and snap.
You score and you snap.
And
what
there's
you're
your cut.
doing, what you're doing the work with is just a circular blade that's on the bottom of that. Let me try one.
All right.
Lift up the handle and press down to come in contact with the tile, and then what? Just run it across
Push
lightly?
it across.
And then pressure down?
Right. See? And
I see. The
You made
table is actually on springs so that it goes down.
you've made a fairly small cut, which is usually pretty hard to do. And see, this is your first one.
Yep. So I'm an expert at it, you're telling me. You sure you can't
Right off
stick
the
around?
bat.
Another hour or two, we'll probably have this finished.
You think so, huh?
Yeah.
I'll give you 5 or 6.
You've got your other plans. We're running out of time for today anyway. Next week, probably I'll be finished and we'll be grouting the floor. We're also going to be doing overhead cabinets in the kitchen. We're going to be putting paneling up in the living room behind here, and if we have time, we'll get around to painting a ceiling. Until next week, I'm Bob Vila for This Old House.
This Old House is made possible by a grant from Owens Corning Fiberglass Corporation, manufacturers of residential building products.